We made a Pokemon type wheel and we're using it to retype every single Pokemon in the Pokédex, starting with a poorly drawn sketch, turning it into a digital sculpt, then bringing it to reality with 3D printing, and finally to life with some paint. Our goal is to fill this shelf with our own collection of completely reimagined Pokemon. Today it's Squirtle's turn. Let's see what type he's gonna get. Looks like he's gonna be Psychic. I jumped into my giant pure ref board with a quick idea of turning Squirtle into a crystal ball. But I ended up heading in a different direction after I came across these symbols with all sorts of meaning. I thought it'd be a pretty cool idea if they were carved into his shell like ancient runes. While I was looking at some psychic Pokemon for inspiration, I also noticed a lot of them have gemstones or jewels incorporated into their design. With a rough plan in mind, it was time to jump into ZBrush. I started from a sphere, blocking him out didn't take too long, and I even threw on a few quick colours while I worked. Poor Tash actually has to paint the real thing though. I landed on the runes Everything Works Out and Courage, as I thought they suited Squirtle's personality pretty well. I also briefly considered giving him a six-pack and pecs, but I decided against it. I played around with where the gemstones should go. I knew I wanted a couple on the head and a few on the chest, but I wasn't sure if I wanted one in the middle of the tail or maybe right on the tip. A bit more sculpting later, he started to finally look like Squirtle. I then moved on to the shell and actually carved the runes in to make them look not so terrible. His back felt a little bit empty, so I decided to add another gem. At some point I started thinking about stars. Maybe Tash mentioned them. So the gemstones on his chest became stars, then the one on his head became stars, then all the ones on his tail also became stars. I even tried whatever this was. Eventually, I pulled his tail into a star shape, and honestly, I liked it way more than covering him in gemstones. Sometimes less really is more. After that, it was time to pose him up, give him a proper digital paint job, and get him ready for his Pokédex entry. The gemstones embedded throughout its body act as conduits for its psychic energy. The runes carved into its shell are said to fill nearby Pokemon with courage and a sense of calm. In the end, I decided to go with a much more yellow tone for his final design, and I ended up giving the more desaturated purple colour to his shiny. Let me know which one you prefer. Now that I'm all done, we can move on to Tash with the printing and the painting.
Now that our Squirtle was finally printed, I sanded off the artifacts left over from the supports. Then I started to figure out the base colours. This time, Luke and I actually swatched a bunch of different yellows before committing to one. Every project so far has somehow ended with me repainting the whole thing because we either changed our minds halfway through or because I ended up hating it. So I thought doing some swatches beforehand would actually save me the pain of that happening again. We settled on this colour and I applied the base coat and shading with the airbrush. But you're not going to believe this. The longer I looked at him, the more he reminded me of a lemon. And I hated it. So guess what? I repainted him again. I thought I could escape it, but it just doesn't happen. This time I repainted him with a sandy beige using regular brushes instead of the airbrush. That also meant tweaking the shell since I felt the original shade was still just a little too dark. Once I finally was happy with the skin tones and shading, it was time to give Squirtle some glam and paint his gemstones, and fill in his soulless eyes. Although while filling them in, I think I accidentally created a demon. Now that Squirtle is no longer the subject of horrors, it was time to goop up the eyes and gemstones with a quick set UV resin. Also making sure to blast my own hand with the UV light in the process. But hey, at least I was wearing eye protection. Now that our psychic Squirtle is finally complete, it's time for the glamour shots.